Clenbuterol is a drug widely used by the fitness community in order to remove stubborn body fat and get stage ready. Originally utilized as a bronchodilator, which means that it expands the airwaves for asthma medication, this drug also appears to raise a compound within the body called cAMP, which helps to remove body fat. In clinical studies, it's helped to remove body fat and add muscle tissue without much effect on body weight itself. So it's obvious why bodybuilders utilize this drug, but what are the potential negative effects? Well, today I'm going to tell you my story, and you're going to want to stick around because it gets pretty nasty. My first experience of Clenbuterol was when I was like 18, 19. I was really early into my fitness journey. I'd spent like a year dieting, getting rid of my sort of skinny fat body, but I made the mistake of trying to get really cut and lean. You know, I wanted abs when I was relatively untrained, sort of 9 to 12 months earlier. So I got to that stubborn point where you quite simply just cannot remove body fat. Your body's like, nope, you're going to have to give me no calories to do this. I am not playing ball. And then somebody at work said, oh, I couldn't really get on with this stuff. Do you want it? It's a fat burner. I was like, well, yeah, of course. You know, anything to help raise the body fat that wasn't green tea extract, because that shit in raspberry ketones wasn't working. And now I look back, I know all too well the reasons why. Quite simply, they don't work very well. But I tell you what does, Clenbuterol. I was handed these tablets, told, look, start at like 20 micrograms, one tablet, work your way up to like 40. That's what I did. And when I first started the drug, the effects were pretty much immediate. And I don't mean in terms of fat burning, I mean the cramps. If you've ever used Clenbuterol, you know this all too well. The number one side effect, which really fucks with you, is those calf cramps. Honestly, every single time in the gym, it would seize up. If I was doing leg day, it was a dangerous maneuver, but it's nothing that a little bit of taurine couldn't fix. I just started popping some pills, and lo and behold, it was resolved. So generally, my first experience with Clenbuterol was a fairly positive one. It helped take me from skinny fat to just skinny, and from there, I went on naturally, as much as you can be after utilizing Clenbuterol, to build my physique. Flash forward 5 or 6 years. I had been through the newbie gain phase. I didn't really gain much newbie gains because I neglected strength in my early days, much to my downfall and much to my regret today. I then had a period of time where I pretty much plateaued and stayed stagnant, with work life taking over. But then, around 2 years before my use of Clenbuterol, things started to get serious. I decided, no, this is my time to commit. I jumped on anabolics. I built my physique up to about 210 pounds in the off season, and boy was I chubby. And finally, I decided it was time to remove the bubble gut. I wanted to do a prep. I had been dreaming, fantasizing about competing for as long as I could remember, and now was the time to pull the trigger. I spent the time investing in my work life, getting stable so that I could launch into a prep and really commit everything that it took to do this, and I knew Clenbuterol would be part of that equation. I introduced Clenbuterol and Yohimbine about 16 weeks out of my contest prep. Quite simply, at 20 micrograms, I faced little to no issues. Same with Yohimbine. Both drugs did not give me a side effect, which was bliss, to be honest. I was all too used to the cramps and I was dreading those returning. That is, of course, until we bumped it up to 40 micrograms. One day, in the middle of the night, I woke up in agonizing pain. The cramps had begun in my calves, and boy were they here to stay. The pain was controllable. I was able to control my rage and hide my screams so that I did not wake up my girlfriend. But alas, I was not to be so lucky in the long term. About 10 to 11 weeks out, we increased the dose. This time, bumping to 80 micrograms. Pretty well near the top end of Clenbuterol usage. However, within bodybuilding, I'm sure that doesn't even scratch the surface. But this is where the real fun starts. The cramps had become insatiable. I was on like, 8 grams of taurine per day, electrolyte supplements like triple dosed, drinking gallons and gallons of water, trying tonic water, trying basically anything that I could get my hands on that might possibly help to fix the issue. But you know what? That's fine. Cramps can be fairly well negated, and realistically, they're not the end of the world. As long as they're not happening just before leg day, you can power through, and within a couple of hours, you'll feel back to normal. The real issue, well, that comes with the more notorious and nefarious side of Clenbuterol, its interaction with the heart. Clenbuterol is cardiotoxic. Unfortunately, it does have a negative effect on your heart. I started to realize this when my heart rate shot above 90 beats per minute at a resting heart rate. But then, we hit single-digit body fat. That's when sleep began to feel like a fantasy of old. No matter what time I went to bed, no matter what I did before going to bed, I would probably wake up 30 to 60 minutes later, insatiably hungry and feeling more awake than ever. One thing led to another. Most of you know the story, and we ended the contest prep because there wasn't an earlier contest to jump into. We were a little bit too lean too early, and the sleepless nights and all the other issues that come with contest prep simply became too much. It was a lesson learned, banked, and I would move on to a long off season in order to gain the mass I needed to make it a little bit more bearable next time and make myself a little bit more competitive. You're probably thinking, wow, that is not a horror story. That is pretty well mild in terms of interactions with Clenbuterol. Well, the issues did not stop when I ended my contest prep. In fact, if anything, they'd only just begun. Immediately we dropped Clenbuterol from the stack, we dropped all of our anabolics, all of our thermogenics, and dropped down to a replacement dose of testosterone. This period of time was spent leveling off my body fat, bringing it up slightly, making body composition healthier, and reducing that killer appetite that meant that I was gorging on Dominoes. Throughout all of this, and yes, diet probably played a hand in it, my heart rate stayed firmly within the 90s. The cramps were gone, but the sleepless nights most definitely were not. Flash forward a few weeks, and I finally get my first night's rest. As Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face. One night I woke up in a pool of my own sweat. At least, I think it was my own sweat. I was cold, I was shivering. I thought, right, I must have had a bad dream, or it must have been something I've eaten, or something that I did throughout the day that impacted my night's sleep. It must have been, because my sleep was just back on the road to recovery. The emergency fan was called into action, the window was left open throughout the day and night, and yet still no relief. For the next few months, the only thing I was making wet in the bedroom was myself in the sheets. From decreasing the temperature to decreasing the caffeine and playing with my food selection throughout the day, I tried almost everything in order to help to negate this issue. As time progressed, I started to think, well, maybe this is sleep apnea, it's not really affecting my life in too much of a bad way. I still felt okay and rested and within reason because of the fact that we're eating normally again. I wasn't binging late at night when I did wake, but it was still a concern, even though it wasn't causing any huge immediate impact on my life. That slight concern quickly became full-blown anxiety when I was hitting a leg day session on the hack squat and going for a PB, and my heart rate decided it would do exactly the same thing. The intensity was too much. I took about a 15-minute break between sets, but generally speaking, by lowering the volume and simply controlling my breathing, I sort of got that under control. But nevertheless, it was still a worrying experience when you can feel your heart beating through your chest and almost fucking see it in the mirror. So far, during prep, we had 2 weeks of sleepless nights. I came off prep, dropped all the thermogenics and all of those contributing factors, and the sleepless nights persisted, as did the heart rate issue. As soon as they diminished, as soon as I got that beautiful full night's sleep, the night sweats began, and they continued for at least 8 weeks. The issue did slowly resolve itself, but emphasis on the word slowly. So if it did resolve itself, if all went back to normal, what is the issue? Why am I making this video and making it out to be such a big problem? Well, a lot of the focus tends to be on the side effects without trying to link them back to a root cause, and we forget sometimes that these things that happen to us, these extreme events and reactions to drugs, aren't just isolated side effects. They often stem from a much more worrying mechanism of action within the body that starts to cause them. What was actually happening within my body was that the heart rate increase, along with the increased dilation, was most likely leading to what they call cardiac hypertrophy. This is the enlargement of the heart. This is one of the issues that the bodybuilding industry is particularly concerned with at the moment, given the passing of so many greats over the recent years, especially due to heart attacks. Now, granted, the cardiac hypertrophy experienced from Clenbuterol in clinical studies seems to be physiological, which means that it can be reversed. However, it's obvious why enlargement of the heart, increased heart rate, and increased blood pressure, which does naturally come along with that, and I did suffer from for a period of time, would be cause for concern within the bodybuilding community. But with this drug now not being utilized within humans, the likelihood of studies continuing are relatively low. This video isn't meant to tell people not to use Clenbuterol. Lord knows with my competitive goals I'll be utilizing this compound again in future, but I'll definitely be watching the side effects with a close eye. This video also isn't trying to claim that Clenbuterol is the most dangerous drug that you can use within bodybuilding. There are far worse beasts out there which can have much more of a detriment to your health. However, I just wanted to explain the reality of this. Clenbuterol is a drug which is extremely widely used, even by people who are not utilizing anabolic steroids. Many young people like myself at the age of 18 or 19 jump into using these because they're readily available online to order. And as bodybuilders, our training style, our lifestyle naturally is not healthy for our organs, especially the heart. Just because the issues diminish, it does not mean this is not going to cause long-term health issues. Just because when you come off it, at some point, the side effects will diminish, it does not mean that's not going to have an effect on your body. Enlargement of the heart is not a laughable matter. It's not a throwaway side effect like a light headache. This is serious business, and with the bodybuilders passing through the community every single fucking month, we seem to see a new one. I just want to stress the importance of making a logical decision about each of these compounds. And Clenbuterol, quite simply, is the only thing I've utilized in the last 2 years. In fact, probably my whole time using any drugs, that as soon as you start, you know your life is going to turn to fucking shit. Now, granted, I haven't tried Tren yet, but still, this drug is not healthy. It does not feel healthy. It significantly raises your heart rate. Likely it will raise your blood pressure. This will, sure, increase your shreds, but the question is at what cost and whether your goals reflect the need to utilize something such as Clenbuterol. I feel like with anabolic steroids demonized so much throughout the industry, we often negate to talk about these ancillary drugs, which everybody knows to be dangerous and a detriment to health, especially certain things such as Clenbuterol, which even within that category of performance enhancing drugs has a bad reputation. We just neglect the conversation. It's just, yeah, Clenbuterol's a bit shit, but have you ever thought about what goes along with those little annoying side effects that you get, like the cramps, like the heart rate, like the blood pressure? Just want to say that if I could go back, I'd at least halve my dose. And I tell you what, I would have questions about whether I even utilized this compound knowing that the prep would fail in the first place, and also knowing that I would suffer for a period of, 4-5 months because of this drug. Even when it came out of my system, it still had an effect. What was causing it? I don't know. Maybe my heart was still enlarged and it took time for it to reduce back down to normal size. Quite simply, I will be getting an ECG this year. I will be getting scans to make sure that I'm healthy before launching into a 2023 prep, and I will document that for you. But in the meantime, my message is simply to proceed with caution. When these little annoying side effects happen, don't just brush it off and try and find the fix. Remember that patchwork solutions like taurine or electrolytes, or trying to do enough cardio activity to counteract the stress, are only going to do just that. Place a patch over the issue which is still very much there, burning a hole through your heart as you dribble water trying to fix the issue. There's no conclusion to this video. There's no answer for those of you out there who are wondering whether it's worth it. That's for you to decide. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.